So let's cue the seats on stage, and we would like to invite some very learned people onto the stage. And we have, well, let's start with, as it appears in the schedule, Simon Ford. Simon Ford, the Area Vice President EMEA of Cyrus One. And Simon is here. Please, let's give him a little round of applause. Here he comes, yes? We have Dick Teunissen. Dick is the EMEA President of Edge Connects. Here comes Mr. Teunissen. We've got, yes, make yourselves comfortable, good. You've got Erik Boonstra. Erik is Vice President and GM Western Europe at Iron Mountain Data Centers. And I'm looking forward to pronouncing this name. It is Jan Dan Luiks, Managing Director of European Operations at QTS. Jan Dan, here he comes. And we've also got Matt Roche, Chief Operations Officer at Yonder. And we've got an extra microphone as well. I've got this one as well that I won't need, so just in case, right? We've got enough butts in seats. We've got one more coming. Here he is. Right. So here they all are. And Mitchell will be moderating, so go ahead, yeah.
Thanks very much, and thank you to our esteemed panel for joining today. There's kind of four threads that I wanted to work through on this panel. You may notice on a panel talking about the European data center market and the outlook, we've got 5 US-backed companies. So it'd be interesting to dig into some of the US-Europe dynamics to start with. Dick, Edge Connects was one of the first companies in the US to really make its move into Europe in this new wave of post-2016 activity. What was the reasoning? Why do you think Europe was so exciting to companies in the US at that stage?
Mitchell, I would say that for us it was easy. I mean, we follow our customers. Edge Connects does not build speculative data centers, so our activity came from customers who had actual demand in Europe. We started out in Amsterdam in 2015, end of 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And indeed, we were one of the first ones. Edge was a dirty word at the time.
Still is.
No, serious. I guess we were pretty much the first ones, and the name obviously says it, right? Edge Connects, that was trying to serve the edge. Obviously then, right, Amsterdam makes a strange mix, saying that Amsterdam is the edge, but it was still, and to a large degree I think still is, a very inefficient market. So it's been a great success for us. I was doing a quick math on the Matchbox when you were presenting the total market numbers, and I'm happy with my market share, so I'm in a good place.
Fair enough. And JD, if we turn to you, QTS has come over fairly recently as a newer entrant to Europe. Do you think those market dynamics still exist?
Yeah, so I think it's a logical step for US companies when they want to enter into new markets that they go to Europe first. It's easy language, same politics, same economic way of looking at business. So for QTS it was a natural step when we want to go into a new market that Europe would be the first one. And Amsterdam, that was a great opportunity. Eemshaven, Groningen, made sense to buy that property and to develop it.
Great, thanks. Let me change track slightly. Erik, EvoSwitch, fantastic Dutch company purchased by Iron Mountain and kept the management team in place. How did you, as someone that had ran a European data center platform, deal with the US culture? Did much change when Iron Mountain took over?
I'm sorry, you're talking about culture? The reason for us as EvoSwitch to sell the company was that we want to expand faster, so we need a lot of money. For Iron Mountain, it was important to go to Europe because customers are asking for that, right? They have a lot of American customers. They want to land in Europe, so that's an important one. And also, what I see is that I think for the next 5 years to come, the CAGR, so the annual growth rate in the US is slowing down. I think it's roughly about 7%, and in Europe is growing faster, like 11, 12%. So I think it's logic, it makes sense to go to Europe for a lot of American companies.
Simon, is that the same for you again? Cyrus One acquired Xenium back in the day, so does that same market dynamics apply for you guys?
Yeah, I think it does. I think, Cyrus One back in 2016 were looking to build a European platform, and the dynamics of trying to build that from scratch are quite difficult. So the acquisition of Xenium back in 2018 enabled them to have an existing platform and from a sort of laser sharp delivery point of view, enable them to bring that growth so that the existing client base, I agree with Dick, the existing client-driven demand that was coming from the US, it means that they have a team already engaged in region to be able to deliver the kind of capacity required. Went from 50 megawatts in 2018 to 104 today, and another 140 to come. So, that bridge across the water, as it were, and that local market expertise and cultural awareness really critical.
Yeah, great. And just over to you, Matt. You're probably the newest name to people in the room, and trying to do something slightly different to co-location. Do you see that opportunity in Europe? What makes you think that the opportunity to develop these large-scale sites exists?
Yeah, so I mean, we're born out of Europe. We're headquartered in Amsterdam, and I think it's a huge opportunity, particularly around the hyperscale. Our focus is really around hyperscale builds, single tenant, and see that as a huge expansion market, particularly outside of the city centres as well. So certainty, speed are all the things that our clients are looking for in that space, and I think it's a really exciting market. I think 2020 for us is probably a year of consolidation. There's a lot of big self-build hyperscale projects coming to a close, and I think 2020 will be the year of planning, and 2021 will be an explosive year. I think we'll see 5, 6 hyperscale projects come out in Europe in that space as well. So 2021 will be really exciting for us all, I think.
Great. And just to move on to the ownership structures slightly, because we've got a mix of privately owned and listed REIT companies. Back over to you, Dick. Does being privately owned give you an advantage over some of the US REITs?
EdgeConneX is a private company, and that helps us to a large degree in this market with a low cost of capital. We have a large private equity firm that's our largest shareholder. I'm happy that we don't have the sort of the daily struggle and tension with public markets, share prices that go up and down over single deals, and we see our competitors struggle with that. I see the guy next to me nod, so there must be something right here. Data center business is very capital intensive, and to a large degree, the cost of capital is driving our ability to compete. The downfall of some of these new competitors is that they are buying themselves into the market. We see a lot of the hyperscalers take advantage of that and put demands on the table for these new projects that are just more and more stringent. So it keeps it challenging and interesting.
Yeah, fair enough. And is there anybody from the other side of that coin that wants to counter?
Yeah, I guess from Cyrus One's point of view, cost of capital is everything. I agree. We've had, the days of getting really good returns on, large scale deals are really over. We have a very educated client base. There's 4 or 5 clients that we're dealing with on a daily basis. They know each market very well, and they put us under a lot of pressure. So us being able to, maintain the kind of return that any company expects is getting harder and harder as we get squeezed. So, the Equinix JV that they're doing, you can see that's why they're going in that direction. Cost of capital is everything.
Yeah, great. And just talking about trying to serve the customers in that sense, if we moved on to just the take-up and demand dynamics, and just turn to the far side of the panel, Eric and JD, CBRE are saying that 80% of European demand today is driven by cloud companies, in effect free companies. Do you guys find that true within your business, and how difficult is a dependency on just 3 or 4 companies to drive business and to drive the markets?
Yes, it's true that the 3 large hyperscalers are driving the market. When I speak for QTS, QTS does not service all these 3 customers, and maybe that's good, because what you've seen now in the US, when there was a slowdown of Microsoft this year, may have impacted some of the data center providers that are heavily leaning on one of those hyperscalers. I think QTS with 2,200 customers and some 50 large logos is well established. We're not dependent on those three massive players in the market. Obviously, they will continue to drive the market, but they will also lead the way for the enterprises. And the second-tier cloud providers will become bigger and bigger. I mean, there are companies that I've never heard of a year before, and they do 20 megawatts in London or very large megawatts in different cities. So I think there's plenty of other customers available for the co-location companies other than the three hyperscale companies.
Eric, do you share that view?
Yes, I share that. So our focus is doing the mix. So we focus on retail, wholesale, and the hyperscalers. You know, there's no other way, I think. If they responsible for 70% of the revenues of the sales, right, for the last year and probably this year again, I think you need them. It means you have to be smart and you have to focus on cost. You know, you have to build cheaper. You have to look for cheaper money. And I believe in the mix, so you still have a good margin in the end.
Matt, in terms of what Yonder are trying to do, how do you navigate those relationships coming into Europe?
So what's important to our clients in Europe? I think that it's been interesting talking about cost of capital, cost certainty, and things like that. Actually, I think what's important to our clients, certainly going forward, is certainty. So one thing I think the market struggle with is certainty. A lot of our clients are looking for speed, scale, and I think the market's really struggled to provide that. And certainly our focus is around giving our clients greater certainty, particularly for those large tech companies. We're focused on that single client scale conversation and speed to market, that they want to be able to make decisions at a much later stage in terms of that, and how they put their capital to work will make a big play in that. A big advantage, as we see it, that privately versus REIT, and I think there's advantages both sides, is our agility to make decisions. So we can, from a client deciding they need capacity, we'll focus very much on how quickly we can get to market for them. So I think in terms of navigating those things, the market needs certainty. That's our priority in terms of how we talk to our clients, and I think it's a market priority as well.
Great. And then Dick and Simon, you know, both companies, like the others, have been very successful in Europe in managing those relationships. What challenges and end user behaviors do you have to manage to make sure that you have the edge over everyone else?
I would definitely say that, as I said earlier, that these new competitors, with all these guys sitting next to me, they're making it hard. They're making my life a little harder. Initially, I only had Michel, I'm sure he's here too, and Schipholrijk, and now Jan Daan is here, and so the hyperscalers have definitely learned a lot, right, over the last couple of years. I remember when we initially deployed in Schiphol that they were basically in so much of a rush that they were just happy to find capacity, right, and space at the time, and we just happened to be there, right, and so it was a good combination. As time has progressed and as they have done more self-builds across Europe, we see them combine design and requirement specifications from their own internal teams as well as from us, right, and other market players. And so the bar in terms of these requirements and in terms of timing, not disregarding cost, but definitely in terms of timing and requirements, is just getting higher and higher. So meeting those requirements becomes more and more difficult. We feel very comfortable having done this now for a couple of years and quite a few of these single builds, that we can meet those and continue to meet those requirements, but it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you know, as we look forward from that, I think there's a next iteration to come, because at the minute we are definitely a service provider community to the cloud organizations at that level, and you know, for us, as we look, you know, I started my career in the telco industry industry with MFS, WellCom and Level 3, and we were building 3 to 5 megawatt facilities in the late 90s and thinking that was huge. And then you've just put those numbers up there. You know, Cyrus 1 is going to be circa 250 megawatts by mid next year from 50 megawatts a year ago, and that's, you just think, my goodness, from a sales point of view, I do think, my goodness, I've got to sell all that. But you know, for us, keeping up with the demand that they have and where it's going to go is really difficult. You know, these things take time. They cost a lot of money to do. There are 100 million bets to put a facility into a new market. And so us understanding, you know, back to your point about certainty, I think our slight frustration at the minute is they don't treat us as a partner. It's very much still a service provider. So knowing where they need to go, we're trying to second guess that. And as we move into the next phase of demand that is no longer 4.5 megawatts, is going to be 20 or 30. Just as an anecdote, you know, the Slough market has about 54 megawatts of capacity, and yet we think there's probably about a 200 megawatt pent-up demand for the Slough market. So where's all that going to come from? So I think for me, the next iteration is more partnership, just a little bit more trust between the parties. You know, closer engagement on where capacity needs to be deployed. Just because I think the cloud companies will be caught out because we won't be ready in a particular market that they need. And that's the piece that's going to be the hardest as we look into the next 5 years.
Great. And just a final question, demand take-up, to everyone on the panel. We get asked it a lot internally. Just around traditional co-location, we call it enterprise demand. Does that still exist for you guys? Is that still a market you look to chase? Do you think there's real benefits of still seeing those customers as quite crucial to what you do as a business, to everybody?
I think enterprise customers are crucial in order to make the margins. It has been said, a build is extremely expensive. The hyperscalers are putting more and more pressure on pricing. As they're not fully open, we have to indeed second guess where's the next wave coming from. So you need to pre-build, at least have the shell ready, so you can make sure that you can be part of that next wave. And if you need to start building from scratch, then you're already too late. So you need to have the enterprise customers in order to make your total business work. And I think that is one of the good things of QTS, with a good mix of hyperscale versus enterprise. And then obviously we also have a lot of government.
I agree with that. So I think for your return on investment, so your whole margin, you need them. It also gives you a challenge because you need to build differently, right? So there are different requirements from the hyperscalers and the enterprise. So it is a challenge. So you have to build your data centers ready for both. And I think that makes it a challenge, but also worthwhile because you need the business.
So it's probably slightly different for us because we're not focused on co-location in essence, but for me, the market moving on and creating an ecosystem. So I think enterprise is hugely important, those consumers and those enterprises, but how we consume them, interact them will be totally different. So if we create this ecosystem with hyperscalers providing services, cloud platforms, things coming from on-premise to off-premise, I think we'll transact totally different. So they're hugely important. They're going to be the absolute client, but a new version of an ecosystem, I think, will change the market. I think we'll move away from that transactional enterprise stuff over time, and that will mature into more of that cloud platform.
We talked about making this panel a little spicy yesterday, over drinks, I have to add. I fundamentally disagree, or we fundamentally disagree. The enterprise segment is not a segment that we serve. We appreciate that our customers serve that segment, and so from that perspective, it is important and it does drive demand for us. We focus on a small group of target customers, the ones that drive volume and allow us to be the efficient and lean operator that we are today. We are not equipped with hosts of people, right, to go into consultative sales processes and all those kind of things. I contest the opinion that it's required for your return on investment. I think it's the opposite. I think that focusing on this smaller group of target customers that has a very different buying behavior and allows us to be the lean and automated machine that we are today is the better strategy.
I think from our point of view, probably quite similar. We're a lean team from a sales point of view. So if you imagine it takes as long to do a 100 kilowatt deal as it does to take a 10 megawatt deal, there's a huge amount of energy, and so we need to make sure that we're focusing on that. I think for us, most of our demand from the enterprise community comes from our existing relationships with the US. So into region referrals into this region. I think naturally the Equinixes of this world are soaking up a lot of the energy from the smaller deals, and there is great value in that. I think the practical point for us is we deploy huge amounts of capital into markets. We'll fit out a 4.5 megawatt hall, and we'll put an enterprise target against that to say let's put some high value clients in there. But then within 3 or 4 months, a hyperscaler comes along and takes that off the market, and then you're back to looking to try and create capacity where you can. So I think it's getting that balance right, and it really depends on a bit of your history. If you have, if you're a mature data center with an awful lot of enterprise clients in, then that's a natural progression for you. You've got a team and ecosystem built around that. Whereas if you're more focused on the hyperscale market, it's just harder for us to engage with that piece of business effectively.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so just moving on to sort of supply development dynamics and difficulties. If we start with you, Eric, look, I think everyone on the panel is looking to expand and grow across Europe, but Eric, Iron Mountain have made no secrets of the ambition to grow across Europe and to grow a big platform in Europe. Are you guys finding it difficult to find sites and key hubs, as many other companies are? If so, how do you go about navigating the challenges of land and power constraints?
We look at this per market, so it depends on the market. So I don't think there are a lot of Evo switches you can buy nowadays, especially in the flat markets. So but depends on the market. So sometimes you just buy some land and power. Sometimes brownfield, sometimes you can do M&A. So it really depends on the market what you can do. So I think especially in the edge market, so the second and third tier markets in Europe, I think there we can do some M&A in the next few years. Flat market will be self-built mainly.
Okay, cool. And how important, Dick, let's take, is being flexible in your approach. So being able to purchase freeholds when you can, leasing where you can, acquiring sites when you can. How important does what you can do in a certain market become as part of your strategy to enter a new market?
It's a difficult question to answer, as it's vague and it depends on the market. For us, it all starts with a customer, and that customer has a desire to go into a specific market, and either it's a market where we are already present and then we can serve out of either an existing data center or we expand on that campus, or it is a new market, and then in a new market, you either buy land or you, depending on the size of the data center, you look for power, then buy land, and then build the data center. And if there are acquisitions that are clean to our business model, then we will definitely consider them. But a lot of the M&A opportunities in the market today are cumbersome with either combined network or a lot of retail in it, and that's just not our business model. And so it would defocus us from what we believe our true mission and strategy is. And so in many cases, we end up building ourselves, but we've had two exceptions to that strategy in both Warsaw and Munich, so I guess it remains vague.
Yeah, fair enough. And Matt, in terms of what Yonder are trying to do you find the same constraints in the developments you're doing?
No, so we've got quite an aggressive land acquisition program at the moment, certainly across APAC and Europe are our focus areas. I've actually been quite surprised at how much availability there is in the market. So we've got some edge selections, metro areas are challenged around power and cost of land, etc. But certainly for the larger plots going slightly further out, what we've seen quite good availability and good value really. Brownfield is a challenge to make brownfield work economically, but certainly the greenfield options at the moment, even in constrained markets, Slough, etc., stuff like this, we're seeing more end-of-life stuff come available, repurposing of real estate. So I'm quite buoyant about what actual land opportunities are out there and the ability to build in 2021.
And JD, moving into Groningen with QTS, was that a virtue of finding assets in a location where you could get entry to Europe? Or is there something more strategic?
No, our CEO, he loves doing deals, and he loves to have a bargain. And Eemshaven was an exceptional bargain. And if you look at it, whenever we go into a new market, whether it's the US or now in the Netherlands, we try to have enough land for further growth. And Eemshaven is one of those cities that has plenty of potential land, has abundance of power, 8,000 megawatts of power, windmills, solar farms, etc., etc. So for us, or for them, it was a good and logical step to get into a market which is buoyant. The Dutch market is a hot market for data center space. You see already a shift from Amsterdam going to Agiport and hopefully going to Eemshaven. Google is obviously a large player who's next to us, currently 400 megawatts, growing to 1,000 megawatts, and they're already talking about beyond. You're building a lot of them in Agiport. So I think for people that have a huge expansion drift, those markets will be the next markets for them. And you can't build a 1,000 megawatt site in Amsterdam or in the close vicinity of Amsterdam.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dick touched on Munich and Warsaw. Eric and Simon, both located in mainstream locations. Do you have any ambitions for touching on those secondary markets? Eric, you touched on those earlier briefly.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I can't really. The noise is really. It's terrible to hear you what you're saying. So.
Yeah, I can't make out your answers too clearly.
A lot of echo in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dick touched on Munich and Warsaw and acquiring sites in those two locations. Both Cyrus One and Iron Mountain currently operating in mainstream sustained colo locations. Do you have ambitions to move outside into more secondary, tertiary markets?
Yeah. Oh, I have to say no. Dick says I have to say no. Yeah, absolutely. So so FLAP is for us the key focus. But we already started looking at what we call second-tier locations, especially in Germany. And there are some bigger customers that ask for that. So they ask us to go there. And one of the advantages of being Iron Mountain is that we're in 52 countries in the world. We got tens of thousands of facilities which we can build into smaller edge locations. And that's what we're going to do. And we're looking in a couple of regions in Europe at this moment.
So, yeah, there we are. So I think for our point of view, we have been very focused on Frankfurt, where, to be honest, no one can build fast enough. We haven't even built our third facility yet, and yet we've sold 20 megawatts out of the 22 that's in there, to give you an idea. So on a pre-let basis. So for us, doubling down in those markets and just continue the growth that we've got is really critical. However, we've got to follow where our clients are going, and certainly the discussions we're having, I reckon in the last 6 to 9 months have been, are you going to the secondary markets in the UK and Germany in particular? So that's where we need to keep an eye on that. I think the challenge we've got is getting our business to invest 50 to 100 million in a new market speculatively like that, given the expectation on return is going to be really difficult. And therefore, for us, it's about making sure we have a client-led opportunity to be able to achieve that. the scale of the facility, you know, I'm not sure. For us, we've got that sized yet, but again, it's driven by the demand from the client that we get.
Yeah, great. And just to finish up on supply development, we touched earlier about the hyperscale self-builds and where they are in Europe, but the possibility of them moving into more mainstream locations and starting to compete with your companies. How do you navigate, firstly, that challenge, and secondly, moving from landlord-tenant relationship to try and work in more of a JV partnership with those companies? If I open that up to the group.
So I suppose this is what we specialise our business on. For me, I think it's a real opportunity. I think the hyperscalers are crying out for it, and we always describe it as augmenting their capacity. So this doesn't need to be competition. When we talk about, I think their business models are evolving the level of capacity they want. They need help in augmenting their own capability, and I think we have a solution to do that. So I think I don't think it's a negative thing. I think it's a positive thing, and we can actually give them capacity to grow out. It doesn't need to be confrontational with us replacing their capability or them coming to competition with us. I think it is partnership, and I think to deal with the demand that's in the market, we need to partner to get to that level of scale. So I think it's a real opportunity.
You know, we are seeing that now. We are after sites in core markets, and our clients are buying plots of land in those sites, often the sites that we want to get for them. So it's an interesting phase. I think what, you know, there's a particular example in the London market where one of the hyperscalers has bought a plot of land and looking to develop that. If you look at the different availability zones they're trying to achieve, they're always looking for this sort of three-legged stool. And they bought a significant chunk of land looking for planning. And they're finding it hard because, you know, we are, us as, you know, from a company point of view, this is what we do. It's our expertise. We do it quickly and cheaply. I think for them, the question I have is, do they have that infrastructure internally to be able to deliver these kinds of projects? And in this case, you know, their brand attracts a premium. You know, in this particular case in London, you know, the local authority has said, yes, we'd love to have you. It's just a case of the 10 million tax to be able to convert that site on planning. So I think it'd be interesting to see the next iteration of this. It's definitely coming, but I think joint venture and more interaction between us is really critical. We're doing a project in Paris a minute that's a joint venture. We're struggling to find powers. We've done a gas generation scheme. It's leased. I think flexibility, that interaction, to be able to deliver things quickly on time for them is really critical. But this particular hyperscaler recognises the fact their name will bring a premium, so they've partnered with us to do that. But I think the next year or two will bring a closer working relationship.
Great, Dick, Eric, JD, any views?
Hello. Yeah. Well, we try to partner with the hyperscalers. Obviously, in some cases you're competing, not only for the same land, the power, but also the people and the contractors. But if they knew how much they needed on a yearly basis, we wouldn't have a job because they would build everything themselves. The fact that they can't predict themselves and they need just-in-time delivery in order to honor their contracts means that, yes, sometimes we need to take a little bit more risk by having data centers ready. But if they exactly knew what they were doing, then we wouldn't be having a job. So I think it's always going to be a cooperation between hyperscalers themselves and the co-location companies in order to meet their own demands. And as long as it's so volatile, we will have a job. But we need to be good partners, and I wish they were more open and tell us more about their plans, and so we could also be more proactive, but also be more cost conscious, because we're always trying to be early in the game, and that has a cost to it.
I think, Mito, any long-lasting relationship requires some shape or form of partnership. that applies to the data center industry too. I think, I mean, to add what these guys were saying, if you look at the longer term projects that in particular these hyperscales do, they typically evolve more towards self-perform. But we've seen some very interesting partnership models, right, that are not around today, right, that they are looking for in terms of flexibility, how you can do business together. And as was Jan Daan is saying, right, if you look at more of the short-term requirements and where their business guys, right, are hammering the site procurement guys on the head that they're not fast enough and they're not building to the pace that their business is growing, then you see them evolve more into a co-location model, and then it's equally hard for us to have the megawatts available in that specific location without being hugely speculative. So I mean, it's a continuous challenge, as is any marriage.
Hello? Yeah. I think it only really becomes a problem if the length of contracts becomes 3 years or 5 years. Then you will see that it's not fundable anymore. So as long as we can do 10 years, 12, 15-year deals, and I was in PTC, and we were even talking about a 20-year deal. So it looks like some of the hyperscalers are going for the long term again, instead of short term. But other hyperscalers are only doing terms of 3 years, mainly in Ashburn. And that's going to be a problem.
I think I noticed a change lately with some of the hyperscalers. So what I see is that they're looking more to a joint venture and working together and looking at 10 or more terms. And I think they need the flexibility, and they want to work more with you as a co-locator. And so I see a change, and I see longer terms for now.
Great. Well, look, guys, I think we're out of time. It's been a great discussion. If anyone's got any final remarks, feel free.
We're good.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and much appreciate it.